if you want to change the quality of the clients you attract, you've got to change your communication in terms of how they get to you. So stop being the vendor and instead start being the expert. You know your business can change people's lives, but you don't yet have the right words to inspire them to take action. Imagine the changes you will create in your business when you tap into the secrets of ethical influence and positive persuasion to not only better serve your clients, but also to supercharge your financial freedom. I'm your host, Jason Linett, and welcome to the Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast. I help coaches and course creators just like you to close more premium sales. And no, this isn't about tricking or manipulating people. Not at all. It's about helping your prospects to appropriately sell themselves into your products or services. Please hit subscribe and get all the episodes now at jasonlinett.com. This week's episode of Hypnotic Language Hacks has got to be one of my very favorite topics: how to sell premium with the right content. Now, if you didn't catch it, though, we put the word right, R-I-G-H-T, we spelled that in all caps. So either I'm shouting at you, or let's go with this one instead. Instead, we're emphasizing where your attention ought to be. Though, to be fair, when I look online and I see what a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants and course creators are doing, admittedly, I do maybe want to stand on a mountain and shout this out to everybody, because maybe you've seen this yourself. Here's the person who's simply putting out material online, let's call it content, just for the purpose of putting information out there. And if you watch it, it doesn't exactly set a premise. It doesn't really deliver anything. It most often doesn't even teach. Instead, it's often this kind of stream of consciousness thought that leaves you a bit confused and admittedly, unfortunately, waste your time. You see, the ideal goal here ought to be every piece of content that you create for your business ought to become like a magnet. And a magnet works in two directions here. Option number one is that, like a magnet, it can now attract in the right people who are the perfect fit for the service and the products that you provide. Likewise as well, appropriately and respectfully, do you like those modifying words? We have to use these whenever we use this language. Appropriately and respectfully, it repels away the people who are not a fit for what you do. This way, appropriately and respectfully, you're not wasting their time, and also they're not wasting yours. So something happens differently when you put that emphasis on producing the right content. You'll hear me talk about this here in a bit in this week's episode, in the way that it pulls you out of the commodity category of just being another person who offers a similar service, and instead it appropriately moves you into the guru, the expert position. So stick around for this week's episode, Sell Premium with the Right Content. Now, I will tell you, make sure you listen all the way through and take some notes on this one as well. And stick around to the very end, because Hypnotic Language Hacks, it turns out there's one very specific sentence that I'm going to share with you that I'll tell you not only changed the shape of my business, but consistently changes the businesses of the people who we work with. I could give it to you right now, but it's not going to have the full value that it will when you see the entire system of selling premium with the right content. Before we get started today, remember this quick website, jasoninfluence.com. Because if you want to easily grab people's attention, naturally build authority, and organically have your prospects wanting more from you, even before you make an offer, I've created a step-by-step strategy to help you to do just that. I call it the Video Influence System. And this is your opportunity right now to discover my highly effective, entirely free, on-demand workshop at jasoninfluence.com. It's specifically for coaches and course creators who want to deliver premium value to their clients to receive premium value in return. So if you want a proven framework to boost your confidence and deliver value that inspires people to take action with you, get your free Influence Masterclass online right now at jasoninfluence.com. So I ought to kick this episode off with a bit of a story, and not just one story, but it turns out 4 stories. 4 stories of conversations that I've already had this week. And a bit of the reason why we actually changed the release schedule in terms of what I had mapped out for this week's episode, number 51. And instead went, you know what, let's just go ahead and record this for everybody. Let's just not keep this inside of our private community. Let's share this with everybody so they can see not only the value of what we help people to do, but also to start to change some of those internal patterns in your thoughts. And I have to go slightly Carly Simon on this one because you're so vain, you might think this episode is about you. Little paraphrase of that classic song, because actually it turned out in the midst of like 6 calls that I did this week of onboarding people into our Hypnotic Influence premium sales for coaches and course creators program, out of those 6 calls, 4 people did the same pattern. And because of that, I went, no, let's just hedge this one off from this day forward and just give it away on the podcast. So, hey, welcome. Here's the scenario. I mapped out with these people a bit of a game plan in terms of how to start to create valuable content to, again, move out of that commodity role and into the expert guru position. And before I get into that, let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Some of you find yourself inside of an industry where it's too easy to make a comparison to somebody else. And I'll give a specific example, though. The one I talked to this week, the personal trainer I talked to this week, didn't do the but I give you the example as if he was the one who did the but, because chances are, if you're a member of a gym, you're already paying some sort of monthly or even annual fee to be a member of that gym. And even if it's like the standard big box gym, let's throw into this the LA Fitness, the Gold's Gym, and many other franchises that are out there around the world, chances are they also offer some sort of personal training option. And admittedly, it's pretty affordable for what they do, for a good reason. They're already getting your money from the membership. And because of that, you're buying into the franchise, you're buying into the company, and then you're kind of being matched with who do they have available. Now, clearly, that's a very different situation than the gentleman who I was talking to, who, from his experience as a bodybuilder, from his 20 plus years as a personal trainer, is now looking at how can he break out of that commodity role where, because the big corporate company is booking his sessions, he only gets paid a fraction of that. And imagine the scenario that he's now in. And chances are some of you may find yourself in something similar, where now he's breaking out on his own. And the task is respectfully convincing people that he's worth a much higher fee based on either individual sessions or, as we're now talking and as we're now putting together with him, a bit more of a package program. You're going to get access to him for like this many months, and here's the one-time fee, which is not how the gyms do it. Again, I know he's listening. This was not about him, though, in this example, because in that category, someone could respond, yeah, but in most cases, somebody's already going to a gym and they can book sessions there for like $40. So they're not looking for that. They're not looking for videos online. They're not looking for information on how to pick a trainer. They're not looking for that. And if you've ever caught yourself in that pattern, stop it. Because what's happening there is you're convincing yourself in that moment that you are no better than anyone else. And chances are the fact that you're even listening to this podcast very clearly means you can identify, you have some sort of what we call a unique selling proposition. You have a unique pillar in terms of what you do. There's some special sauce behind your approach, why you do deserve to be in that expert role and, as the episode is this week, appropriately sell your services at a premium. Again, my personal trainer didn't do that, but I talked to at least 4 other people that as soon as we started to map something out, I mean, genuinely, until we got to the end of the call, it was in one ear, out the other, until they really saw what was happening and how, admittedly, they were convincing themselves that something wasn't going to work because they were asking themselves the wrong questions. Rather than ask yourself, why would someone pay me this premium? Ask yourself instead, what can I do differently to step into that expert role and serve people on a much higher level. This is going to get relatively deep here for a moment, but think about this. You can either accept your fate or you can change it. So option one in this personal trainer theoretical category, because actually my personal trainer was like, yeah, here's my stories. What do I do with them? And that's where we put the influence principles in place. But if he had been the one playing this game of the yeah, but, he could have been there blaming the industry. He could have been there putting down the models that most people find that they can book with a personal trainer. He may be there going, yeah, but I can't go into the gym and offer, a la carte services because the rule is at that gym, I have to be on staff there. And that's what I'm trying to get away from. Instead, he was already on board. He was already recognizing that if you want to change the quality of the clients you attract, you've got to change your communication in terms of how they get to you. So stop being the vendor and instead start being the expert. And what do you do once you actually have this information? That's, again, the promise I've got for you at the end of this week's episode. I will give you the magic sentence that not only has exploded my business, but also helped countless other people around the world. Let's sidebar for a quick moment here and define a bit further exactly what we mean by content. Either one, what is it? And two, what can it be? These are two questions that we need to address before we start to build the strategy here. So first of all, content in our world would be any piece of information that could help somebody. How's that for a relatively vague piece of instruction? But think about it. This could be an article. And inside of articles, we could say this is an article either written about you, or I'll mention this here in a moment, so act surprised in 15 seconds when I say it again. It could be a blog post, an article that you've written and you've published online, though it may not necessarily be in a blog format, which is why I separated articles and blogs. The one that I live by, the one that's the favorite, and again, you've already heard about it in the transition here on this week's episode, jasoninfluence.com. What if you could produce video content in such a way that has your ideal clientele wanting more from you even before you make the offer? Video is the king of all content right now, in our honest opinion, through our testing. And people who are promoting and selling by way of video are most often selling at that premium quality because they are now creating that relationship. People do business with people. And even as I worked with clients who had fears of public speaking, it turns out that once you had a few hypnotic language hacks, the right words in the right order to best convey your message, and again, have people wanting more from you even before you make the offer, that confidence went through the roof. So if that's not yet a skill of yours, again, head over to jasoninfluence.com and get that free masterclass training, completely free, absolutely on demand right now. I'll wait. jasoninfluence.com. Okay, good. You got it. Welcome back. Also inside of this category could be anything social. I say social media in a much more broad sense because honestly, nowadays, all media is social. But then again, we can play with different platforms. I mean, YouTube is a platform of videos. And because people can leave comments and hit like and all of that, it's a social media platform, whether you realize it or not. Similar to that, there's Facebook, TikTok, Clubhouse, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the others. The simple statement there is you don't have to do them all. Ask yourself two questions. Which is the one that you'll keep doing? It's kind of like the old riddle that what's the most effective exercise? The answer is the one that you'll actually do. So stick with the one you'll actually be consistent with, but also ask yourself the question, which platform is my ideal audience already on? So admittedly, that's why I do so much on Facebook, because my clientele I found is most often on Facebook, and we do some other stuff on these other platforms as well. At the end of the day, what we're getting around to is either one of two concepts. One, you're creating a digital footprint. This is going to become every bit of that magical search engine juice that makes it so people can possibly find you. Also related to digital footprint would be the fact in the 21st century, we all Google each other, which sounds a little more risque and nasty than it actually is. But no, we all check up on each other. You're about to invest in a service, And you may look online and see, are there reviews? What other information you can find? And it's where, in the shape of running the businesses that I've run over the last dozen plus years, we've made it a point not just to own certain number one positions on Google, but in some cases to actually own the entire first couple of pages. This is why, as part of my strategy, I go on other people's podcasts, because you're down with OPP. Yeah, you know me. So making use of other people's podcasts, or let's simplify that, other people's platforms, that's what's building that digital footprint. So when they're in that bottom of the funnel decision-making phase, they may do that search and they see, okay, this is the guy who does this. So one part of that is creating that digital footprint. The other part is creating your own library to curate from. We'll come back to that concept here in a moment. Do you like the cliffhangers? Makes it even better to keep listening here. In terms of what does that content speak to? Well, this is one that I can give you a few guidelines. I can give you a few recommendations, though in many cases, it might be different based on your business to another business or your approach to someone else's approach. If I could give you, let's say, 4 very simple bullet points to get you up and running, to get you up and starting. For those of you inside of our Hypnotic Influence Premium Sales community, we actually break it down even further in terms of how to create this master guide in the shape of your business to never again be in the guesswork of going, now what do I do? But here's 4 of them to get you up and running here. Your content, first and foremost, can satisfy objections. So what are the concerns, which is actually also number 2, answers concerns. And we can use those words interchangeably, and whatever your definitions may be, as soon as you define for yourself the difference between a concern and an objection, these are 2 very different things. And it's important to recognize when someone just may have a concern versus they are objecting. You know, one's a question, one's a challenge, would be my framework of that. But speak to those different concepts and maybe what are the questions that people often ask you? What are the concerns? What might be the reasons that some people speak to you, but they don't yet buy? Well, guess what? Rather than have to do that cold and in real time and in person for the rest of your life, start to capture that as content. By the way, as much as I am a fan of the listicle format, here are 5 ways to do this. Here are 3 ways to do that. Here are 11 reasons you hate clickbait. You won't believe number 9. See, that's funny because, okay. But the benefit of that is it draws people in and gives them a roadmap of where to go through. I will say, I want you to go for the smallest of quickest wins if this is new to you. Create content around one idea. So your article might only be 300 to 500 words, which is only a couple of paragraphs. Your video, your audio you produce might only be 3, 4, 5 minutes. How long should a video be? It should be as long as it can sustain attention. And embrace the fact as well. Some people want that short path. Some people want that long path. As I'm over in the hypnosis profession teaching one of the leading certification programs for people to then become professionals in that industry, on YouTube, you can find it if you look for it. There's this one video of mine that's like 2 hours long, and it's a full training from a meetup. And even I'm shocked how many people have watched that entire presentation, both people wanting to hire me as the hypnotist, as well as people wanting to learn how to do it. For the topic that it teaches, I am not the expert in that. I don't position myself as the number one person. So I say this playfully, I should not hold the number one spot on YouTube for that specific technique. There's clearly in that industry someone else who should own that position. But I go off in this little side rant here for a moment because honestly, you never know what specific piece of content will take off, which is why another piece of content could be just to simply get up and teach something, provide something of value, which I put this inside of another category, elevating someone's status. When you inform somebody, when you educate them, they become better. They become stronger. They become more wise about a topic. And they're also now, in the course of elevating their status, realizing perhaps there's more to learn. There's more to put together to make what you're sharing with them even more effective, which appropriately gives them a reason to reach out and then engage with you. Similar to that as well, so far our points in terms of what can the content be: satisfy objections, answer concerns, elevate status, and the fourth one, increase belief and confidence. Isn't that an interesting thought here? Increasing belief and confidence. This is the content that you can begin to create. Well, how do you do that? No, you don't just go on camera and go, you're going to feel more confident. No, you tell stories. Stories either based upon research, if it applies to your field, or specific testimonials and case studies. Those of you inside of our influence community, be sure to go look at the storytelling techniques inside of the metaphor section, and you'll see the ways to tell stories about a specific person, but in a way that it now universalizes to your audience. They make the story about themselves, and even better, they now start to tell themselves the story, I can do that too. Because realize, the further you get into your business, some people may not buy from you. And it's not because they don't like you or they don't like your product. It's that, I don't want to say they don't like themselves, it's that they don't yet believe in their own capabilities. So by the use of storytelling and the right approach, what you can actually do is put them inside the story where now they're changing that internal dialogue, and now they're getting that feeling of the small, quick win, and now they're telling themselves the story, I can do this. Isn't that a whole lot better of an approach than just saying, take photos of your food, as someone who has admittedly taken photos of my food and put it up online? All right, so this is your roadmap. And there's more to this in terms of exactly how we can start to produce that content, how we can simplify it, how we can make that easy. Let's go to the real meat of this, because this is how to sell premium with the right content. Here's the part to pay extra special attention to. There's two pathways I'm going to share with you. Part number one, we've already hinted at. They discover your content on their own. Now, admittedly, there's a part 1A and a part 1B to this. Two segments of how they discover it on their own. It could be just that organic stuff that's sitting there and the magic of the web. And as the wind blows, the sand clears, and suddenly they see your video on YouTube, and that's how they discover you. Perhaps. Or another option may be, if you're at a place where you're now paying for traffic, paying for advertising, you can now take your piece of content and strategically put it in front of the right people at the right time. So option number one is that they discover it on their own, which, let me just be bold here for a moment. Whatever your industry may be, the overwhelming majority of people are not doing any of the stuff I've been sharing with you so far. The fact that you're still listening to this week's podcast clearly puts you into a different category, because you're thinking from a place of service. You're thinking from a place of educating and informing, and in our world, then inviting them to take the appropriate next step. You're not going to be the person who's just putting up on the website, here's the example, personal training sessions, $90 an hour. But we don't yet have the criteria as to whether or not this person is skilled or even good at what we do. So already, by looking at this content creation formula, every asset of yours that they discover is increasing not only their status, as I've already shared with you, but also increasing your status and positioning you even further as the expert. That's option one. That's kind of where we'd most often like to be, that by the time someone gets to us, they already see the value. They already have a connection with us, and they're already willing to go further. That being said, there's a part two of how to use this content, which would be that you curate it for them. If you've been around business and advertising and marketing long enough, maybe you've heard this phrase, the fortune is in the follow-up. And sometimes I may share different ideas or experiences in the sake of my business, and it's never meant to brag or boast. It's never meant to impress upon you, here's how awesome we are, though we think we're pretty good. It's instead to share with you what exactly is possible. I have a relatively high closing rate. By the time someone gets on a call with me, it's well over 70, 80% at times in terms of by the time they actually get to me, that they actually buy the product that was then the obvious next step in terms of where to go. And in many cases, if they don't buy that intended product, well, guess what? I may already have another service or a different product on another business line that then becomes the best fit for them. And sometimes it is the fun equation where they're calling for one thing and it's a combo of things that's even better for them. And now, yay, the fun of custom invoice. So I tell you this, that our closing rate is relatively high, but even I'm not selling every single person. And even better, as high as that rate would be, I'll tell you, not everybody gives the credit card over the phone. Not everybody, if I say, hey, check your email, I just sent you the invoice. Do you see it? Great. As soon as you've done this, here's steps 1, 2, and 3 to be inside the community. They might sit on it for a day or two. And so often in business, people think if they don't buy right away, it's a no. And no, the fortune's in the follow-up because we have so many follow-up systems built into the structure of our businesses. I would say we match. So think of a webinar. I may run a webinar and we see a big rush of sales and maybe carts open for the next 10 days, and yet we'll make just as many sales over the next 10 days by the follow-up email sequence. Once again, the fortune is in the follow-up. So how do you do this? I hear you cry. Well, here comes the magic sentence. And it's to never, this is where the ethics come into all of this, it's to never put somebody in a decision point where they're being forced to choose something when they're not yet ready to do it. If I don't hear the kind of hell yeah demeanor in their tonality, in their language, and how they're responding to me, if we're on a Zoom call, if I'm not seeing that, I'm not going to necessarily ask for the sale right there. Because you know what? It sounds like you're still in that research phase. And I'd imagine you're probably looking around at a few other options out there too, right? Well, my most successful clients are the ones who have been educated to make the best decision for themselves. What's a good email address that I can send you a video that will answer most of your questions about this, plus the ones that even you haven't yet thought to ask? What's a good email I can send that to? Did you catch that? It was actually 2 or 3 sentences there, to be fair, but this is that magic sentence. And the key thing is something that will answer your questions, plus the ones you haven't yet thought to ask. That opens up a bit of a loop. That creates a bit of a pathway in their mind of going, well, what else do I not yet know to ask? And this is where you might, in the shape of your business, here's a quick win strategy. Okay, we'll go back to the listicle. You might create a video where you simply answer the 5 most common questions that people have about what you do. And that might be your video to get you up and running. And look at that, you're now making that fortune from the follow-up. Then again, over time, you're going to have this digital footprint. You're going to have this library of your own from which to curate. And it might be the moment. I did this twice in the last week. Both of them resulted in a sale. One of them, I pulled a video out from our influence course and just sent it over to the person to say, hey, you're asking some questions about something. Would it be okay if I just gave you an advanced preview of that specific part of the training content? So I just gave away the piece of content from that section that answered what they were looking for. They joined right away. Another one was they had questions about how does it apply to this other industry? And because I'm always on the mindset for producing more content, I had an interview with a successful student in the same industry. And I shared that specific interview. So there's wiggle room to this. I'll say it again, and we'll make sure that my podcast editors, as we write the show notes for this week's episode, we'll just highlight this sentence. We'll feature it on the jasonlinett.com/51. This is episode number 51 page. My most successful clients are the ones who have been educated to make the best decision for themselves. What's a good email address that I can send you a video that will answer most of your questions, plus the ones you haven't yet thought to ask? This is a change in the dynamic, where now it's not the game of, hey, you going to do this? Hey, you signing up? Or I've seen people do this to me before. Hey, making sure the invoice worked for you. We've been having some programming issues. I'm like, just outwardly ask me if I'm going to buy from you or not. And instead, this gives you a means to follow up, fortunes in the follow-up, by means of providing even greater service. Did that bring up any other further questions? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Great. Do you want to get this set up today? And in most cases, you've now got that rapport. And yes, to go back to the yeah buts. Yeah, but people in my industry aren't Googling. They're looking for whoever's the cheapest. They're looking for who's on this discount of the day service like Groupon or Living Social or whatever else may be where you are. Well, if you accept that fate, that's going to be the reality. And step into the ownership of this understanding that you owe it to your clients to become that curator of content. You owe it to your clients to step into this role of educator, guide, guru, expert. You owe it to them to serve them on an even higher level, even before they pay you. And admittedly, by doing that, that's where they pay you even more frequently. I'm going to give it one more plug, and forgive the shameless plug here, though then again, this is absolutely free. Head over to jasoninfluence.com, because if video is a weak point for you, this is going to give you full access to my video influence system, to give you a formula to actually now create this content, create that narrative, and then land that call to action where people are ready to move forward. Likewise as well, when you go through that sequence, I'll tell you ahead of time. No surprises here. The very last button on that sequence of videos inside of jasoninfluence.com is to actually get on a call with us. If what I've been talking about is something that you know you're going to see better results with a proven game plan, and you know you're going to see better results with a guide to show you what works and shortcut that learning curve and give you the strategies that will get you up and running sooner, that's exactly what we do. But first, get the value. Go to jasoninfluence.com, watch the training, and then schedule time for that influence audit. We'll chat with you. We'll set that game plan for success and indeed help you to make it rain. You've been listening to the Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast with Jason Linett. And hey, let's hang out. We have an incredible free community online with weekly live training events that I'd love for you to join. Your free private pass is available right now at joininfluencegroup.com. If you want exclusive access to a thriving community ready to help your business grow, this is the place for you. Because every week, you will be surrounded by coaches and course creators at the top of their game, leveling up their success with hypnotic influence for business. Join us today at joininfluencegroup.com.